guys. One of my favorite people to teach are kids. Sorry, adults, but I love working with kids. Why? Because one, they're very playful. Number two, they're willing to try an activity. And number three, they're usually a lot more brilliant than I sometimes think they are. If I introduce an activity and think it might be difficult, it's never difficult for them. So the activity ends up going extremely well. So this video is dedicated to all people working with kids. I wanted to share with you some of the activities that I do in my classes. And I made a list out of them. I have around 10 activities that I will share with you. Number one is stories. You might have seen these on my channel, lots of them. Stories, telling stories, reading stories. And how are we going to do this? One of them is reading stories. You get stories from the internet and ask them to read different students, but try to get really childish stories. Activity number two are mind maps. I've shared videos about these before, but I'll explain. There are two ways to do mind maps. Number one, you give them a topic, for example, clouds, and you show them how to draw a mind map. Here they will need colors, they will need colored pencils, first of all. They'll need paper and just have fun. They may do this in groups, they may do it individually. So you give them a topic, for example, clouds, and you ask them to write whatever comes to their mind that's connected to clouds. You can do this in groups. For example, you have two separate groups in your class, and one group gets a representative. They go to the board, and for example, they say, okay, when you mention clothes, what words come to my mind? For example, clothes, shopping, clothes, red, blue. They rate the colors of clothes. They rate the maybe cotton, silk, etc. They write maybe expensive, cheap. So they have different groups so that they compete with each other. This will be extremely entertaining for the kids because they will have to communicate with the person writing for them. And at the end of the game, you can check out to see who has more words, and that group gets 1 point. You go on to the next topic. You say food, and then you try to connect the words in connection to food. That's the first way to do mind maps. It's like brainstorming actually in this first example. The other way is you ask them to, for example, you do foods and you give maybe different categories. I'll link an example of some of the mind maps I've done with kids and adults. You can also do this with adults, teenagers, all adults, real adults, like 40 years old. So you can, for example, the topic is food, and you maybe draw one branch that says fast food, and the other one is healthy food, or unhealthy food, healthy food, cheap food, or summer foods, or summer fruits, or anything. You try to create categories, and they create more categories out of those categories. So you make sure this they may do in their books so that they can color, they can do anything they want with this activity. The other activity is interviewing people from their family. I love this because it's a real activity. They are really getting to use the language. For example, they go to their mom and they ask, Mom, when you were a kid, for example, when we do the topic of used to, I used to do this. Instead of doing lots of exercises in the book, I ask them to ask their mom and dad, what are the things you used to do when you were a kid that you no longer do as an adult? So they'll go ask their mom, Mom, when you were a kid, what did you used to do that you no longer do? So the mom will be like, why? It's a homework from school. So the mom will be like, I used to maybe like playing football I no longer like playing football, or I no longer play football. So when they come to class, they've asked their mom, they've practiced with the etc. They've learned that context from their parents. So there is an emotional connection. And then you move on to, they come to class and they share it with the same class, with the whole class. For example, my mom used to love doing this. She no longer does that. And I ask why? Because blah, blah, blah, blah. And they'll give reasons. So it's a great activity, great homework activity. So interviewing people from their family, or interviewing their parents about the things they like, about the things they don't like, stuff like that. So that's interviewing people from their family. The other one is origami. This I love so much because usually classes are like, let's get the books, let's work with the books and stuff. But origami, you come with balloons and the kids can watch you do something. You can go to YouTube and learn just 2 basic things, or 3. You can use balloons, you can use papers, colored papers like these, like those. So you get, I will also link a video of me doing origami with one of my students. Her face was priceless. She was super excited and I enjoyed doing it. It was amazing. So while you do the origami, you could give instructions and make sure they follow, which means they practice listening and they're also doing something, so they're not focused on the book. But make sure it's super easy, or they'll get frustrated and it will not be fun. So find something very easy or intermediate. Find 3 things: easy, intermediate, and difficult, and see how it goes, so that at least by the end of the class, everyone has one thing they can show off that they accomplished. That will make them super excited for the next classes. The other thing are songs. We all love music. I love music, and doing songs with your class, it's the best gift you can give to your kids, students. You can, for example, go to the internet, print out the lyrics, but before you print it out, copy the lyrics, delete some words according to the level of the students, and then give the song to the students. They listen and try to fill in the words that you deleted. So this is a listening activity, and after they've learned the song, they'll be singing the song out of the class, singing the song at home, singing the song everywhere, which means they learn all the vocabulary. And then you can also translate the meaning of the song. You can do this in, for example, the song is in English, they translate it to their native tongue. For example, my students speak Turkish. They translate it to Turkish. Or they get a song from Turkish and translate it to English. This was very much fun when we translated from Turkish to English, because it was like, okay, the language in the songs is a lot different from the general speaking language. It has more of rhyming and so many other exciting things, like it's like poetry, which brings us to our next activity, which is poetry. This the first time I introduced poetry to my student, the one I usually share on my channel, I told her, do you know anything about poetry? She was like, what's that? I told her, shir in Turkish. She said, yes. I'm gonna write a poem. I didn't ask her to write a poem. This is why I love kids, because she quickly said, I'm gonna write a poem. And I'm like, yep, that works for me. Write a poem. And she came back to the next class with a poem, a well-written poem. So do poetry with them, because poetry is just beautiful and it has a different pattern like the songs, which creates a different excitement for the language. And then we have role plays. Role plays, many schools do. For example, you're in a restaurant and you're trying to get food. That's great. Do restaurant role plays. For example, you're on a hotel, you go to a hotel and maybe you lose your parents, because these are kids. They're not going to go to the reception and ask how much is the hotel and everything. You're at a hotel and you lose your parents. What do you do? How are you going to ask around to find your parents? So they'll try to imagine themselves in this situation and try to communicate, use the language. So role plays are great. The other thing is photographic memory. Photographic memory can get loud. This is how we play photographic memory. You ask the students to bring items from their bags. For example, one puts a pencil, one puts an eraser, the other one puts highlighter, marker, they put books, they put different things onto the table. For example, something like 6 objects. It depends on the level of your class. So if you've put 6 objects onto the table and you ask the students to, for example, one of the students to go outside of the classroom, and what do? The rest of the class remove one object and hide it. And the other student comes back to the classroom. So when he or she comes back, they're supposed to guess which item was removed from the table. If they knew we had 6 objects onto the table and now we have 5, it means one is missing. Which object is missing? Which means they've learned the vocabulary of these objects. For example, eraser, book or notebook, pencil, pencil case, board marker, eraser, etc. So they've learned the vocabularies. Now they have to guess what's missing, and the rest of the class will help by saying whether it's hat when they're approaching the place where the item has been hidden. So they'll say hat or cold. No, you're far away. If they're far away, getting far away from the item, they say, no, cold, get back. For example, they're walking around and you say, no, that's very far away. Instead of saying that's very far away, they could say cold. So when they're saying cold, hat, the class will get noisy, but they're having fun. That's what matters. The rest don't matter. And in this photographic memory, you could bring, for example, vegetables. If you're reviewing vegetables in class, you've learned vegetable names, you could bring vegetables. They could be plastic, or you could really go to the market and buy vegetables, put them onto the table. For example, something like 10 vegetables, 10 fruits with their names. For example, you hide 2 of them, or hide 3 of them, or hide all of them. And they have to say the orange is missing, the tomatoes are missing. They could actually use sentences. This is missing, this is missing, this is missing, something like that. Or they could write on pieces of papers, fold them and put them there. So they have to find what's missing. You can tweak the game according to what you have in class and according to how much time you have. This is a great game to play maybe after the class, after they've learned something. And the other thing, lastly, is storytelling. Storytelling, I usually tell stories from my language or from other countries, or stories I've read before from different books. You could tell them a story. How do you do this? While you're telling a story, this is super important. While you tell the story, don't mind about the grammar, don't mind about the vocabulary you use. Try to use your body language to communicate. So you tell the story, and while you tell the story, if you use a word that you think they might not know, try to ask them, what's the meaning of this word? They tell you, and then you continue explaining so that they don't get lost. If they keep on losing track of what's happening because of the huge words you're using, all the difficult vocabulary, grammar, etc. you're using, they may stop following the story. So keep on stopping to check if they're understanding, And for example, the last story I told my student, in the story, there was a little girl who the monster had taken, and my student was like, no, she could go. And I asked why. So if they try to give you suggestions to the story, ask them why. then they will speak back to you, which means they're listening and they're speaking back to you. It's conversation. That's the best conversation we can have, because language is about telling stories about what you did over the weekend, about your summer plans, about anything you plan to do. So tell stories, and after you tell the story, you might ask them to write the story in their books, the story that you told, or you ask them to tell you a story. So in this case, they also speak, and they might say, no, they might shy away, like, no, just you keep on asking them questions, because they might not add so much details. They might say, there was this and this happened and they went to this. You'll ask, why did that happen? Do you think it was a good idea? Would you do that if it were you? Even if you've not learned the grammar structures of would you do this? Don't mind that. Just carry on with using the structure. They will understand. And that's all. I think I've mentioned all the activities. You could do this with a group of with a small classroom, with a big classroom, or with just one student. I usually do this with just one student. But if you have something like 10 students, 20, it's going to be a lot more fun, because you will need more time and you will have different ideas. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this. I would like to know, what activities do you do in your classrooms? I would like to try your activities. Please share with me in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Bye-bye. Have a great time. See you next time. Bye-bye. Which kind of punishment, for example?
She can go his parents, but she came again.
So you wanted the monster to let her go
and came
and
again.
She can come again and clean the house and cook. If you were the little girl, would you come back and clean if the monster lets you to go?
Baştan öyle bir yanlış yapmazdım zaten.
Okay, in English.
First, I don't do false.
Yeah, you wouldn't eat the meat. Exactly. So when they came to the forest, the monster had turned into a very beautiful and handsome prince.
Biliyordum. Prenses Bella'nın hikayesi.
English,
Princess Bella, please teacher, please. Where is the princess? Princess Bella.
Is that the Princess Bella story?
İddiasına